There is a moment, quiet and almost invisible, that most people never notice. It happens in the space between waking up and fully opening your eyes, that half second where the world is still soft, where your mind has not yet been claimed by noise. It is a moment of pure, unfiltered existence. And then, almost without thinking, your hand reaches for your phone. The screen lights up, notifications flood in, and just like that, the moment is gone, stolen. Not by anyone else, but by you, willingly, automatically, as though your nervous system had been trained to fear silence more than it fears stress. This is where the story begins, not with a dramatic breakdown or a life-altering crisis, but with a single, honest question that changed everything. What would happen if I stopped? What would happen if, for just 72 hours, I refused to let any screen tell me who I was, what I was missing, or how I should feel? That question, simple on the surface, terrifying underneath, is what led me into the most revealing experiment of my life. And what I discovered on the other side was not what I expected. It was something far more important. We live in an age that has quietly declared war on stillness. Every app, every platform, every notification is engineered with one singular purpose: to keep your attention hostage for as long as possible. The science behind this is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented, studied, and openly discussed by the very people who built these systems. Your brain, magnificent and ancient, was never designed for this level of stimulation. It was built for fire and forest, for conversation and contemplation, for rest as much as for action. But somewhere in the last 2 decades, we handed it over to an algorithm, and the algorithm does not care about your peace. It does not care about your sleep, your relationships, your sense of self, or the quiet dignity of your own inner life. It cares about engagement. And engagement, in the language of neuroscience, is just another word for dopamine. Every scroll, every like, every unexpected notification triggers a tiny release of dopamine, the brain's reward chemical. And the more your brain gets, the more it craves. This is not weakness. This is not a lack of willpower. This is biology being exploited at a scale humanity has never seen before. Dr. Mindful Shift has spoken about this pattern for years. The way modern technology, when consumed without intention, does not just distract us, but fundamentally rewires the way our brains process calm, connection, and contentment. The baseline shifts. What once felt like peace begins to feel like boredom. What once felt like enough begins to feel like deprivation. And anxiety, that quiet, creeping, chest-tightening anxiety that so many people carry without understanding why, becomes the background frequency of daily life. Not because something terrible has happened, but because the nervous system has been so overstimulated for so long that it no longer knows how to return to rest on its own. This was exactly where I found myself before the experiment began. Not in crisis, not broken, just quietly, persistently unsettled, like a radio stuck between stations, picking up interference from every direction, never quite finding a clear signal. The decision to go screen-free for 72 hours did not come easily. I want to be honest about that, because too many conversations about digital detox make it sound effortless, like a weekend at a spa, serene and uncomplicated. The truth is, the first thought I had when I committed to this experiment was a specific, irrational fear. What if I miss something important? And that fear itself told me everything I needed to know. Because when your first response to silence is fear, you are not in control of your relationship with technology. Technology is in control of your relationship with yourself. The preparation was deliberate. I set an out-of-office message, informed the people closest to me, put my phone in a drawer, closed my laptop, and covered the television. 48 hours before the experiment began, I started tracking my anxiety using a simple daily scale, rating my restlessness, my ability to focus, my quality of sleep, and my emotional steadiness on a scale of 1 to 10. I wanted data. not just feelings, because feelings can be dismissed, but numbers make it harder to lie to yourself. What I did not anticipate was how loudly the absence of screens would speak. Within the first few hours, I noticed something I had not felt in years: boredom. Pure, unmedicated, uncomfortable boredom. And here is where it gets philosophically interesting, because boredom, in our culture, has been treated as a problem to be solved. We carry devices specifically to ensure we never have to sit with an empty moment. But boredom is not emptiness. Boredom is the doorway. It is the mind's way of saying, I am ready, ready for thought that goes deeper than a caption, ready for feeling that lasts longer than a reel, ready for a version of you that exists independently of any audience, any feed, any external validation. Sitting with that boredom, resisting every urge to reach for stimulation, was the first act of genuine courage in this experiment. Not the kind of courage that makes headlines, but the quiet, private kind that changes everything. By the end of the first day, something had begun to shift. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but unmistakably, like the first light of a dawn you forgot was coming. The second day was where everything became real. If the first day was uncomfortable, the second day was something closer to unsettling. And I want to describe it carefully, because I think this is the part that most people who attempt a digital detox never talk about honestly. By the morning of day 2, my hands still reached instinctively for a phone that was not there. Not because I needed anything specific, not because I was waiting for a message or a deadline or a piece of news, but because the habit had become so deeply grooved into my neurology that the absence of the gesture itself felt wrong, like reaching for a handrail that had been removed from a staircase you have climbed 10,000 times. The body remembers what the mind has not yet accepted, and in that gap between memory and reality, anxiety does not disappear. It sharpens. It finds new shapes. It asks questions that screens usually drown out before they can fully form. Questions like, who are you when no one is watching? What do you actually think when no algorithm is curating your thoughts? What do you feel when no content is telling you what to feel? These questions are not comfortable, but they are necessary. They are, in fact, the most important questions a human being can sit with. And the tragedy of our screen-saturated lives is that we have built an entire civilization of distraction specifically so we never have to answer them. By midday on the second day, something physiological was happening that I had not fully anticipated. I was tired, but it was a different kind of tired than I was used to. Not the wired, restless exhaustion of someone who has been scrolling until midnight. This was a deeper tiredness, almost cellular, as though my body was finally being given permission to exhale after holding its breath for years. The science behind this is precise and worth understanding. When your brain is constantly exposed to high stimulation content, rapid visuals, emotional headlines, unpredictable social feedback, your cortisol levels remain chronically elevated. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone, and in small, appropriate doses, it is essential. It sharpens your focus, prepares you for challenge, and keeps you alert in moments of genuine threat. But when cortisol remains elevated, not because of real danger, but because of simulated urgency, breaking news, social comparison, the endless scroll of other people's highlight reels, your nervous system pays a price that accumulates quietly over time. Sleep becomes lighter. Mood becomes more volatile. The threshold for anxiety drops lower and lower until things that would once have rolled off you now leave marks. This is not weakness. This is physiology. And it is reversible, but only if you give your brain the one thing it desperately needs and almost never receives: genuine, uninterrupted rest from stimulation. This is precisely what Dr. Mindful Shift has described as the recalibration window, the period, typically beginning somewhere between 36 and 48 hours into a screen-free experience when the nervous system begins to find its own rhythm again. Not the rhythm imposed by notification cycles and content algorithms, but the older, deeper rhythm that is native to the human body. The rhythm of breath, of hunger and satisfaction, of thought that moves at the speed of reflection rather than the speed of a feed. I felt it arrive in the afternoon of day 2 like a change in atmospheric pressure, subtle but unmistakable. My thoughts began to slow down, not in the way that feels like fog or dullness, but in the way that feels like water becoming still enough to see through. And what I saw when I looked through that stillness surprised me completely. Here is where the suspense of this experiment reached its peak. And I need you to stay with me here, because what I am about to share is the part that I almost did not include, because it made me feel more exposed than any data point or anxiety score ever could. On the afternoon of day 2, sitting in silence without any screen to retreat to, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt sad, not catastrophically, not in a way that required intervention, but genuinely, quietly, honestly sad. And the sadness had no specific object. It was not about a person or a situation or a failure. It was something older than that. It was grief, I think, the kind that accumulates when you spend years moving too fast to feel it, the kind that lives just beneath the surface of a perfectly curated life, the kind that screens are very, very good at keeping submerged. And here is what I want you to understand about that sadness, because this is the part that changed me. It was not a problem. It was not a symptom of something going wrong. It was evidence that something was finally going right, because a nervous system that can feel sadness is a nervous system that is working. A heart that can grieve is a heart that is present. And presence, full, honest, unmedicated presence, is exactly what anxiety has been stealing from you every time you reach for your phone to escape a feeling that only needed a moment of your attention to pass through and release. By the evening of the second day, my anxiety score had dropped by 3 full points on the scale I had been tracking. My sleep the night before had been the deepest I could remember in months, and something else had shifted, something harder to measure but impossible to ignore. I had begun, slowly and tentatively, to remember who I was before the noise. The third day arrived differently than the first two. There was no alarm, no notification, no external signal telling me that time had moved. There was just light, morning light, coming through a window I had stopped noticing months ago because I was always too busy looking at a screen to look at a world. And in that light, something fundamental had changed. Not in my circumstances, not in my responsibilities or my relationships, or the practical architecture of my life. What had changed was interior. The static had quieted, not completely, not permanently, but enough. Enough to hear something underneath it that I had been drowning out for longer than I cared to admit. Call it intuition, call it clarity, call it the sound of your own mind, finally audible after years of being buried under an avalanche of content that was never truly meant for you. By the end of 72 hours, my anxiety score had dropped from a 7, which had been my uncomfortable, normalized baseline, to a 3. My sleep quality, tracked through a simple journal of how rested I felt upon waking, had improved dramatically across all 3 nights, with each night deeper and more restorative than the last. My emotional regulation, my ability to sit with discomfort without immediately seeking escape, had strengthened in ways I could feel in my body, not just observe in my notes. These were not miraculous numbers. They were not the result of medication or therapy or a dramatic life overhaul. They were the result of 72 hours of silence, of simply stopping, and that, perhaps, is the most important thing this experiment proved, that your nervous system already knows how to heal. It just needs you to stop interrupting the process. Now I want to give you something practical, because philosophy without application is just beautiful noise. If you are ready to try your own 72-hour digital detox, here is the framework that made this experiment not just survivable but genuinely transformative. Begin with preparation, not deprivation. At least 24 hours before your detox starts, Inform the people in your life. Set automatic replies on your messages and email, and identify the specific windows of time. Ideally, a weekend or any 3 consecutive days where your professional obligations are minimal. Do not attempt this experiment in the middle of a high-pressure work week. Give yourself the gift of timing. On the first day, expect discomfort and do not interpret it as failure. The restlessness, the boredom, the phantom urge to check your phone, these are not signs that something is wrong. They are signs that something is working. Your brain is beginning to reckon with a dependency it did not know it had. Let the discomfort be present without trying to fix it. Walk, write in a journal, cook something with your hands, sit outside and watch the sky do what it has always done, with or without your attention. On the second day, go deeper into the things that screens had been replacing. Real conversation with someone you love, a book that requires your full concentration, physical movement that connects you back to the body you have been neglecting in favor of a digital life. Pay attention to your dreams, your appetite, your energy levels. These are your nervous system sending you signals it could not transmit through the noise. And on the third day, before you reintroduce any screen, take 1 hour of complete stillness, no activity, no replacement stimulus, just quiet, and ask yourself the question that Dr. Mindful Shift believes is the foundation of all genuine mental transformation. What do I actually want my relationship with technology to look like going forward? Not what is convenient, not what everyone else is doing. What do you want? Because that question, answered honestly, is where a new way of living begins. The world will not slow down for you. The notifications will keep coming. The algorithms will keep evolving, growing more sophisticated and more seductive with every passing year. The pressure to stay connected, stay informed, stay visible, stay engaged, it will not ease on its own. Which means the choice, always and only, belongs to you. And this is the philosophical truth at the heart of everything this experiment revealed. Anxiety, in its most common modern form, is not a chemical imbalance or a personal failing. It is a rational response to a life lived at an irrational speed. It is what happens when a human being, with a nervous system built for depth, for rest, for meaning, is asked to perform the function of a machine indefinitely, without pause, without silence, without the space to simply be. You are not broken, you are overstimulated, you are not weak, you are exhausted in a way that sleep alone cannot fix, because the exhaustion lives not in your muscles but in the very circuits of your attention. And the remedy is not complicated, even if it is not easy. It is silence, it is stillness. It is the radical, countercultural, deeply human act of putting down the screen and remembering that your life, your real life, with all its texture and feeling and quiet beauty, is happening right now, in this moment, whether or not you are present enough to receive it. The 72 hours I spent without a screen did not give me a perfect life. They gave me something better. They gave me back the ability to feel my own life, fully and without filters. And that, more than any productivity hack or wellness trend or self-help strategy, is where genuine transformation begins. The experiment is over, but the invitation, for you, is just beginning. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.